Welcome to the Ji.hlava International Festival of Documentary Film, where I'm joined by Andrea, Kleine, director of The End Is Not What I Thought It Would Be. Welcome to Ji.hlava, Andrea. My first question is, what was the original idea, the spark for this film?
Well, the spark for this film was I was supposed to have a theater project in December of 2020, and obviously with the pandemic that wasn't going to happen. So in an effort to save the project, I was talking with the director of the theater about what would be possible, and he was really pro doing anything because he had to cancel everything. And so I came up with the idea, what if I moved into the theater, lived there for 2 weeks, and every night I would perform on stage for no one. And this would somehow be the theater piece, but we would also film it and would become this documentary film.
And what were the conditions? Did you have to bring in like 2 weeks worth of food in advance? What were the conditions of life in the theater?
Well, this was at the Chocolate Factory Theater in Queens, New York, and like a lot of smaller New York City art spaces, it is an industrial building that's been repurposed into a performance space. So it's not like this building. It's very raw. There was erratic heat, but pretty good heat, and there was no shower, and there was no kitchen except for a mini fridge. So yes, we did bring in a lot of like pre-made frozen meals, and we had to bring in an air mattress, and because there was no shower, we had to bring in a kiddie pool in order to bathe.
And you're performing, as you say, to nobody every evening. Did that process change as time went on? Did it get easier, for instance?
I got weirdly better at it. If you see in the film, so the performances that I did every night for no one were improvised monologues, completely unscripted. I didn't know what I was going to do when I stepped in front of no one, with the exception of my partner, Bobby Previtt, who's a musician who also came with me. I didn't know what I was going to do. So you see in the film that the early monologues are a little more awkward and they're more edited. And as the film progresses, the monologues become less and less edited. And the final monologue, the last one I did, is completely uncut.
And the whole film is, I don't know, 1 hour, 20 minutes. How much were you actually recording every evening? I mean, how much of what you performed, do we see? Like, did you speak for like an hour, or do you know what I mean?
I did several improvised monologues per night. So I would do about, I think I averaged 3 to 5 monologues per evening, and they averaged about 20 minutes each. So it was a lot of talking. And we also filmed our daily life in the space.
How was the editing process then, when you had to go back and in a way relive this very intense experience?
Well, the editing process took longer than it would with a professional editor, because I had to learn the editing program in order to make this film. And it was weird because these monologues were improvised, but in the editing process, because I watched them so much, now they're memorized. So they're imprinted in my brain in a very different way than if I had just done an improvised performance and never looked at it again.
One thing I was curious also was whether you're into jazz, because some of the speech is almost like, not scatting, but you're repeating a word again and again, you're kind of riffing. Then we have Bobby Previtt doing some kind of jazzy musical sounds. Are you into jazz?
Well, I'm into jazz because I'm into Bobby Previtt, who's my partner, who is a very well-known jazz or new music composer and drummer who performs quite a lot. So through him, I've also learned quite a lot about improvisation. And I do repeat a lot in the improvised monologues. One of the reasons of that was because I had to find a way to keep going and to not judge myself and to kind of deal with my fear of doing it and just the complete awkwardness of not having an audience. And I think another thing in this film was trying to recreate that sort of charged live moment of live performance, of having someone on stage and an audience and this sort of like energy that happens in the room. And if no one's there, how do you recreate it? So a part of it was that thing of like, fill the air, keep talking, don't stop.
What did you get out of the whole experience? It seemed so intense. What did it leave you with?
It's hard. A lot of people want to talk about the ending of the film, and it's hard not to talk about it. And I won't, because it would spoil a lot of things. But it was a very emotionally moving experience for us. At that point in the pandemic, even though now it's years later, at that point in the pandemic, it had only been maybe 8 months or so. But for some reason, that chasm of loss, of disconnection, it felt more intense at that time. So there were just a lot of intense feelings.
You speak a bit towards the beginning about acting and authenticity and performing and what does it mean to be in the moment and all this kind of stuff. Did you feel through riffing on all of that you came any closer to a conclusion as to what makes good acting or acting?
Oh gosh, this is one of those questions, there's no answer. There's no right answer. I think it's very personal, and this is where I think theater and documentary film overlap, is a quest for truth and a quest for authenticity, a quest for what's happening, trying to figure out what's happening and how we connect.
To go back a little bit, when the first time you did it, when you're there in front of the camera or the iPad, whatever you were using, what was the feeling like of just being there in this empty space, I guess probably for the first time, performing to nobody?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit before that. When we met Brian Rogers, the director of the Chocolate Factory Theater, outside the theater, he handed us the keys and said, bye, see you in 2 weeks. And we opened the door and we were just giddy. Like, we were so excited to be there because we hadn't done anything for 8 months. And we walked into the space so excited. Then, when the reality came in of, actually this is work and it's not what we're used to and it's very strange, and also we had to do all the technical things ourselves and we're not technicians, so it took us a lot longer. So the beginning was very awkward. There was a feeling of what have we gotten ourselves into? Is this ever going to work? Is this ever going to be anything?
Was there ever a moment where you thought, this wasn't such a great idea? Maybe we've done 4 days or whatever. Maybe let's just quietly forget about it. Or were you determined all the time to go through with the whole thing?
No, we never were going to junk the whole thing. No, we were so happy to be doing something. We were so happy to be doing something. A lot of my friends who are in the arts, performing artists, actors, musicians, dancers, were extremely jealous of us. I got so many text messages while we're there. Do you need anything? Can I stop by? Can I help you in some way? And it was a privilege to be able to do this project.
We're speaking ahead of the world premiere here at Ji.hlava, but some people will have seen it. What kind of reactions have you got so far to the film?
This is the first time I'm showing it to a wider audience. I had a private screening of it for some people in New York, and for them it was a bit more personal because they know the theater and the community of artists there. But I think it does have a universal appeal in sorting through our feelings about how we connect to each other on a real level.
My final question, at the time, COVID felt like the whole world was rocked, like it was the worst thing we ever experienced, like our World War II or whatever. But now, everything's more or less gone back to normal, at least here in the Czech Republic and in Europe. Did COVID change us, really?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think the pandemic was a radical reframing of what's important to us, what we want to do. This is why everyone's quitting their job, and everybody's like, I'm moving away. I'm gonna go live on the opposite coast or something like that. Oh, absolutely. And I think we're still now it's a bit ironic that the film is titled "The End Is Not What I Thought It Would Be," because the end is not what we thought it would be. In fact, the end is not even the end. It's still going, and it's not obeying a narrative arc that we want it to. And so I think that's the change. That it's destabilizing, and it continues to destabilize.
Andrea, Kleine, thank you very much for joining us here at the Ji.hlava International Festival of Documentary Film.